Well, and the silence in the film is something that resonates very powerfully. Every time you talk about this stuff, you end up using words like resonate and words that are metaphorically about sound or the absence of it. But the silence, both of the survivors in this case, and their attempt to have their voices heard, but also the deafening silence that comes back when the people in power and authority don't do anything. They're silent about what is happening. They're condoning it. So yeah, you know, it was the ramifications of that we didn't belabor, but it was obviously evident to me when I started in on the story that that was the most haunting quality about it. These kids learned that there was something going on that was systemic, and that was terrifying to them. But also in a way, once they began to talk with each other, once the silence was broken, they began to realize, oh my God, I'm not alone here. And that was tremendously empowering for them. But you know, the key case here also, and it's something that has a horrifying detail in this story, but is resonant throughout other institutions that condone this kind of abuse, is the fact that Father Murphy in Wisconsin would intentionally pick on kids whose parents could not sign. So actually they were silent with their parents because they couldn't find a way to talk to them unless it was through an intermediary, either somebody that they didn't know or somebody they did know, unfortunately, like Father Murphy. Imagine having to confront that dilemma where the only way to communicate is through the person who's doing the abuse. So it was a very powerful story. I think for these guys, look, last night was a very powerful moment for these survivors. When they stood on that stage and look at all those people clapping, standing ovation for them, you know, this was the culmination in a way of a long struggle. And I think as difficult it is for them to move forward, I think they're feeling a sense of victory and empowerment because after all these years, their voices are being heard and they are making a difference. And when you've been lonely and when you've been cast out and when you've been marginalized that way, and suddenly you realize not only are you being heard, but you're maybe actually having an impact and you're able to protect other children from the things that you went through, well, that gives some resonance and meaning to your life so that you can go forward. And as difficult as, I think it's harder for them in a way to confront the past, because I think some of those guys paid a very heavy price for not reckoning with what had happened to them. And so it would come out in unexpected ways that was destabilizing for them, and they didn't understand really why, because they were keeping it bottled up inside. And it was the ability, you see Terry Kohut, one of the survivors, go, he needed to get it out, and he goes, you know, in a kind of, in a signing motion. And it's that explosion, that ability to let it all out, which ironically, of course, is what you do in confession in the Catholic Church, right? And in this case, their confessional abilities were abused, but to finally let it out in ways to other people, that was liberating for them because they could now confront their demons. So I think they have a harder time reckoning with the past and what they missed or choices they made that they might not otherwise have made if they had opened up earlier. The future, I think, interestingly enough, looks increasingly bright for them because there's a mission and a cause, and it's being realized. One of the most striking scenes in the film is not one that I filmed. It's a piece of videotape that was uncovered in the making of the film of 3 of these deaf survivors finally going to confront their abuser in person. And they do so knowing that the authorities in charge have not in any way, shape, or form held this person to account. But they feel that for themselves, they must reckon with this guy. So they take a drive up to northern Wisconsin to confront him directly. And that's what they do. And it's a riveting moment because it's 2 people who have shared this unholy act. And now one is confronting the other about what they've done. And I think they don't get anything like what they'd hoped for, which was some sense of remorse, and in fact just the opposite. The helper of this guy, Father Murphy, keeps signing at them vigorously, "You are a Catholic, you are a Catholic," as if to say, "Take one for the team, what's wrong with you?" But what's important for them is that they do confront. They look him in the eye and say, "We know what you did. I'm willing to say openly what you did. And it was just dead wrong. And it was a crime." And that, I think, is tremendously liberating for them. And I think it helped all of them, all the kids who were up there, go on and persevere. And it was tremendously liberating. That moment of confrontation, it's the closest thing to justice that they've been able to manage. I've done a number of films that are about the abuse of power, but the particular resonance of this film for me is the fact that at its center are 4 heroes, people who are essentially voiceless because they are deaf and are not able to speak to hearing people unless they know how to sign, but also who are powerless, and yet they use the strength of their own characters and the power of their voices to not only make the system that abused them confront their crime, but actually to help to solve that crime for people going forward. So they're not big and powerful people, they're everyday heroes. But everyday heroes sometimes can make a difference. And I think in a film like this, that's what makes this one different. I was raised Catholic. I was confirmed Catholic. I would say that probably ended my formal relationship with the church, except for the fact that, in consideration of my father, I had my kids baptized and I negotiated with a priest for my father's funeral. Outside of that, I haven't really gone to church again since I was confirmed. I have a relationship with a God, but I'm not sure it's interesting to anybody else but me. I like to say I believe in God, but not in religion. And some people find that too contradictory. My dad was an important influence on me, so was my mom, and so was my stepfather. My stepfather was an interesting character in thinking about this film because he was a minister. And also I think what he taught me was that belief in God can be, for some people, a way of thinking about morality. People say, "Well, you're a political filmmaker." I kind of like to disagree with them and say, I don't feel like I'm a political filmmaker. I feel like I'm a filmmaker who reckons with moral issues that hopefully transcend politics. So that's, I think, one of the things that my stepfather taught me, that as a man of God, he didn't need to convert people to be able to talk to them about moral issues. And the moral issues of the day, he was very much engaged in the kingdom of earth rather than the kingdom of heaven, and in terms of reckoning with those moral issues and trying to bring some sense of social justice.